Welcome to the Financial Game Plan with Hannah. Welcome to the Financial Game Plan with Hannah. I'm your host, Hannah Burchage. I have a really neat guest with me today. His name is Jeff Watson. I've not met him. He made a post one day on Facebook about subject to, and I'm like, heard of it, but I don't really know what it is. Click message, do you want to be on the podcast? He graciously accepted, and here we are. Jeff Watson, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. It's a privilege and an honor to be here.
Oh, you're precious. Okay, so let's get this started. Mr. Watson, can you tell us who you are and where you are in your real estate journey?
Sure. Folks, I've been around a while. My name's Jeff Watson. I'm a full-time practicing attorney in Ohio, licensed in Ohio, but practicing for I'm in my 33rd year of doing it. I'm a part-time real estate investor. I have finally clawed my way out of the rat race, and I'm now blessed to only work on matters with clients that I want to work with. And so, folks, I'm going to flat out be straight up with you. If it doesn't involve a self-directed IRA, if it doesn't involve a real estate deal in Ohio, then you're not going to be able to hire me. And the second thing is I am doing a lot of information marketing right now in the area of subject to acquisitions. I've run a email newsletter for a dozen years now. It's pretty well read. I've got a couple 100,000 readers throughout my entire distribution network. And I've got a pretty diverse background as far as law and real estate is concerned.
How did you get into real estate if law was your background at first?
I've been practicing law for about 2 or 3 years and a boutique law firm in downtown Cleveland. And folks, if you want to learn how to litigate, that's where you got to go. You got to go to the big city and swim with the big fish fast. You're going to grow up. I mean, I wanted to be a trial lawyer. And then I quickly realized that trial litigation was a gut-wrenching, soul-sucking experience for the lawyers, let alone the clients. And it was merely swapping hours for dollars. And as an associate, you are not making the bank. So, even 20 years ago, I was knocking down $500,000 a year or more in gross rev. And in my book of business at a law firm, today that would be about 1.3 million, which is a really good rake for the average young associate. And I was getting paid chicken feed off of that. So I knew I had to do something different. So I bought my first property. First home I ever bought was a duplex. I lived in one half and rented out the other half. So I house hacked before it was a thing. And I got inspired by doing this because I had 2 uncles on my mom's side of the family. They were real estate investors. And one of them really struck a chord with me because he never got past the 8th grade. He's my favorite uncle today. Never got past the 8th grade, dyslexic, learning disability, stutters, but he made his first couple million in residential real estate. And then he kicked it into higher gear. Today, the dude is extremely comfortable. They 1031'd out of Southern California into Frisco, Texas, before anybody else knew what Frisco, Texas was. Their holdings there have quintupled. And their grandkids don't have to work. They're set. So, yeah.
So a family member is what said, I've got to do something different.
Family members showed me that if an uncle of mine that never got past the 8th grade can do this, then I, being the first guy in the family to ever graduate from school, let alone law school, first licensed professional in the family, I'm like, man, I'm swapping hours for dollars and he's financially free. So it ain't about education. It's about how you apply yourself.
I agree with that statement 100%. My background is I'm an elementary school teacher, and these parents are tough on these kids. And if you want to be a lawyer or a doctor or an engineer, go to college. If you want experience, go to college, but you don't have to. There are other avenues. So the point of me getting you on the show was to talk about subject to. For my listeners out there who do not know what subject to is, can you just tell us what subject to is?
I'm going to first tell you what it is, and then I'm going to talk about why you should listen to me when it comes to the topic of subject to. Subject to is an abbreviation for a term or a method of acquiring usually residential real estate. We've done it with commercial. Buying the property, getting the deed from the seller to the buyer, recording the deed without paying off the underlying debt that the seller had on the property. The buyer instead agrees in writing to keep making those payments. So the debt stays in the seller's name, the property comes to the buyer's name, The buyer continues to make the payments, so it doesn't require nearly as much cash out of pocket from the buyer. You get to take advantage of the low interest rate loans that the sellers got 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 years ago, instead of going out and borrowing money at 8% today to buy the same property. So those are the big reasons we wanted that a subject to has become suddenly very popular. I started doing subject to deals about 21 years ago. And now, then about just going into the pandemic, I recognized where the market was going. I reintroduced the subject to course. I've since pulled that back, retooled it, simplified it, because most people couldn't understand the transaction because I made it a little too complicated to protect everybody. I've dumbed it down. I simplified it. And so now I've got a course out there called Serious Sub 2. And I chose that name for a specific reason, because you don't do subject to on the fly. You don't do a subject to off of just watching some Instagram videos or YouTube or TikTok or anything else like that. You've got to really dig down and know what's going on.
So you are uniquely qualified to teach this, because why?
Okay, I'm glad you asked the question. Let me tell you why. There's a number of reasons. Number one, I'm a real estate attorney. Number two, I own a part of a title company. Number three, I do transactional documents for the title company on a regular basis. That's just the beginning. Here's the really heavy artillery now. I'm the only real estate investor that I know of that has been in front of Congress for over 10 years, changed national federal housing policy, not once, not twice, but 3 times. I have been in front of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau advocating to be able to continue to do land installment contracts. I'm currently pushing a bill in Congress that I helped co-write on expanding seller financing. Subject to is a form of seller financing. When certain members of Congress have real estate questions, they call me.
So those of you who are just listening and not watching, my jaw is on the ground. Not what I expected at all. How do you get, now I realize you have a law background, but how do you get those thoughts to Congress as a regular person? How do you do that?
Well, I got into it from a very interesting way. Before I got into subject to again, I created a whole new methodology for doing short sale transactions. That I did back in 2007. It became incredibly popular 2008 and beyond. It got plagiarized, copied, duplicated, ripped off, and Xeroxed everywhere. And then Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae came out with an underwriting bulletin that said, we don't like this option contract method in short sales. So they literally painted a bullseye on my back. So I had no choice but to gather some friends, go to DC, hire a lobbyist, and push back against Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae. So the first time I succeeded in doing that is when I got Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae to back off on their short sale deed restriction language. They wanted a 180-day restriction on transfer. We got them down to 30 days. We staked out a little tiny seat at the table on housing policy. And it was that position that then brought me to the attention of other investors who wanted to modify a piece of Dodd-Frank regarding restriction on seller financing. So I've been in that fight with other friends for about 7 years now. And I have been in about 250 briefings and meetings on Capitol Hill with members of Congress, members of the Senate, their staffers, their policy directors, and so on. Oh, by the way, yeah, I've also been to FHFA, Federal Housing Finance Authority, that has jurisdiction over Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae, to tell them what I thought of how they could streamline their operations, and they listened. So I've done CFPB, I've done the Senate, I've done the House, I've done Freddie Mac, Fannie Mae, I've done their boss, FHFA.
Holy crap.
So let me put it to you like this. There's nobody else out there that has done what I've done. There's nobody else out there that's created the systems and the processes and drafted the paperwork. There's nobody out there that's drafted it knowing that they may have to get asked questions under oath in front of a congressional committee about why are you teaching people to do it this way. So I've locked it down to where I can raise my hand and on a straight and not be scared of how I get asked questions. And I've fought for rights for real estate investors in ways that most gurus can't even imagine or dream of.
I'm blown away. Like, I'm truly blown away. This is When I say not what I thought you were going to say, this is not what I thought you were going to say.
Yeah.
I'm trying to even think of a follow-up question to what you've said, and I'm kind of going blank here. What are your thoughts and feelings as you're doing these things? Is it just like the I'm fighting for the just? Is it, oh crap, is this gonna work? Is this I'm spending so much time and money? What are your thoughts to this process?
Yeah, well, I'm going to answer that really simply. I had the chance to have dinner tonight with two of my three daughters, my son-in-law, and my two granddaughters. And I look at my granddaughters and I go, this is why I'm doing this.
Oh,
My granddaughters are going to be able to tell their grandkids, man, I wished you'd have met Papa Jeff.
oh, stop. I'm gonna cry.
I wished you'd have seen what he did for us. Papa Jeff made it to where we can still own houses. Papa Jeff made it to where we have income coming in from apartment buildings. Papa Jeff made it to where it's still legal for people to invest in real estate.
That's a beautiful answer. That's a beautiful answer.
That's
So
my
you're
motivation.
I love that. I think that family is we do everything for my daughter as well. I have a 5-year-old named Caroline, and part of my mastermind, one of the activities they had us do was to do the 7 questions to get down to your why. And mine is the word options. I want the option to be able to do all these things that, well, let me phrase it. I want the option for my daughter to do all the things that I could not do, and I want her to have that. So, absolutely love your answer. You talked about an apartment building. What type of things are you currently investing in?
So I own some single family properties. I'm not going to tell you the number of doors. I don't know. It doesn't matter. Okay. It's doesn't, whether it's 10 or 100, it doesn't matter. Okay. Most of what I own right now, I've bought subject to.
Okay.
Okay. I also own a small mixed use commercial building, 14 units in an office space, and my office is in here, and that's fine. That's where I'm sitting right now. But then just last month, a colleague and I just closed on our first syndicated deal, or my first syndicated deal, her 20th. It's a 153 unit building in Athens, Ohio. Strong cash flow. The rents are going up. It's a great deal, and it's a whole new world for me. I'd been in the, how do I say this? For me as an investor, I own single family and small multi. I've done large transactions. I've done a number of $20-30 million transactions. So this, my apartment deal was right around the $13 to $15 million price point, but it was different because I was raising capital in a syndication process. And this is the first time I've ever done that. And trust me, I'm a babe in the woods on that stuff. So don't ask me questions. I raised money because of my name, my reputation, and my relationships. As far as the PPM and the SEC and all that stuff, that's my colleague. That's Kira's role. She's the genius there, not me. I'm the transaction guy. I'm the paperwork guy. She's the compliance and overall genius.
Well, congratulations on that. That's a very big deal. So I
Oh,
am
and
going to ask.
can I interrupt you? On
Absolutely.
that deal, we had a like subject to component in it because we negotiated to take over the existing bank debt of $6.4 million, which is at 3.25% interest.
Oh,
That
wow.
was a major coup when we brainstormed that, and she negotiated it, not me. We brainstormed it. She negotiated. I reviewed the paperwork. That was what made the deal work.
That's amazing, especially in today's world. That's phenomenal. Congratulations. So
Thank
you
you.
said you don't want to answer a question about it, but I am going to ask you a question about your process of raising money. I know you said your name is a really, really big standing, especially with what you told us. How was the process of raising money for you?
Scary. I've never had to do it before, but I still remember my very first jury trial. Scared to death. Now I've got 20 of them under my belt. They bore me. They don't bore me to tears. I'm just exhausted. I don't want to do it anymore. I spent 30 years in the courtroom litigating. I'm done. But I still remember my very first jury trial. I remember all the mistakes I made. I remember what I did right. And so it's going to be the same process. But the key to raising money is your network. Your network becomes your net worth. And so your reputation, your character, your integrity, how much you've shared and given and helped and lifted up others is everything in this business. And so the 10 plus years that I've been sharing content related emails twice a week to a list of 10,000 people that gets picked up and republished, and National RIA shoves it out to their people, and Fortune Builders and RealFlow shove it out to their people. That's what built me the reputation to where I can make a phone call and in 2 phone calls raise millions of dollars.
So if your network becomes your net worth, which I agree with you 100%, What type of advice would you give to people who are younger, or maybe their network is not of the affluent status? What could they do to build that?
Find the right places to hang out.
What kind of places would that be?
For me, it was being at real estate related events, being at quality events that are populated by people who really do the business. I'm gonna differentiate now, okay? And this is not a disparagement, but there's a lot of people that are real estate investors that are still part of the buy and breathe generation. All they've ever seen is real estate to go up. If you got into real estate 2011 and later, you've only seen it go up. You weren't there for the white knuckle of 7 through 10. You weren't there for the dot-com implosion. You weren't there for the long-term capital collapse in the mid 90s. You didn't see interest rates seize up at those times. You didn't see the market go nuts. I've been investing through all of them, but my friends, my mentors, my colleagues, some of them have been investing for 50, 60 years. And so they know this stuff even better than I do. So I shut up and I learn from them. And I go to these things where I just learn. I mean, I'm privileged now to sit on the board of directors of Quest Trust Company, a large self-directed IRA custodian out of Houston, Texas. Quest events are a fantastic place to go learn. Quest Trust Company, fantastic place to network and build relationships. Note Expo, just last weekend, put on by Note School in Dallas, Texas. Another high quality event. You've got major players there. There's a lot of other quality events. I mean, there's another event kicking off in 1 week in Las Vegas, Masters of Real Estate, where some of the all-time greatest residential real estate investors in America were going to be there. I'm going to be tied up somewhere else. Otherwise, I'd be there. But that's the kind of stuff you do. Find the good events. And these are the events where content is taught, not course is sold.
Big difference for sure.
Huge difference. I have no issue with selling a good quality course. I do it. I made a living for years selling on a stage once a week, almost once a week, when I was doing stuff with fortune builders. Great guys. I'm still in business with those guys to this day. I don't sell a course every month. Now it's online and so on. But you've got to get to the events where they actually teach the nuts and the bolts of how to do real estate when the market goes sideways.
What are your thoughts on the market now? Since you have been around it a time or two, I've only been in the market for about 3 years now. I'm late into it. I'm younger, so I'm working my way through it. But what are your thoughts on the market now?
So you're an elementary school teacher, right? So you're very familiar with, or at least I would hope you're very familiar with Wile E. Coyote. So we are where the coyote has just run off the cliff.
Okay.
Gravity has not yet taken a hold of him. He still may be holding on to an Acme anvil. He may not be. I suspect that this market is going to do some weird things. And I think this is just my opinion. I don't have an economics degree. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a data analyst. This is just my gut feeling from seeing a few things in politics. I don't think we're going to see the Fed cut rates anymore. I think we're going to see unemployment get ugly. It's already getting ugly. I had a few people in my syndication step out at the last minute because they got laid off from really good Silicon Valley jobs. What I see coming is there's going to be a panic cut in the rates. It's not going to last long, but it's going to be an opportunity to adjust whatever you got. And so right now, folks, clean up your credit, take advantage of this opportunity, because I think we're going to see rates down a little bit in 6 to 8 months. Because remember, we got to get reelected. We got to make the economy look really good 360 days from now.
Correct.
It's got to be sterlingly good for people to get reelected. Otherwise, the throw the bums out mentality may be too bad for a lot of incumbents on both sides of the aisle. So I suspect we're going to see a window there, and then inflation is going to take off like a rocket ship, which is then going to force the Fed to raise rates again, even higher than what they are now. And so we're going to see this roller coaster get steeper and deeper and get more compressed as time goes on. Wow. That's the Jeff Watson theory.
Buckle up, Buttercup, because it's going to get bumpy. That is.
There you
You
go. I think
what
I've said those exact same words in the past. Yeah. Yep.
your thoughts are very similar to my thoughts. People don't like them, but that's what I think as well is going to happen. I think the election is going to be hellacious on our economy, on our numbers, on rates, on all of our things. I think it's going to be tough.
Okay, so folks, I do not wear a tinfoil hat, but I'm going to flat out tell you the way our government reports certain economic data is not true. The method that we use to calculate the CPI, consumer price index inflation today is radically different than how they calculated inflation the last time inflation was this bad back in the late 70s, early 80s. We have changed it. If we went back and used that same formula, inflation would be double what it is now. They have skewed the way they cook that. So they cook the books. And they've cooked the books to save their own skin, because if they really let inflation be what it was and they told the truth, the cost of living adjustment for everybody on Social Security would be double or triple of what it's been. And they can't afford to pay that, and they don't want to pay that. And that's a bipartisan concerted effort. I'm not picking on one party or the other. This isn't what you thought you were going to get into, was it?
No, not even a little bit. I was going to ask you what conferences you like to attend, and you hit that. And we talked about meeting people and networking, and you hit that. But I love politics. I'm not going to say what side I follow or if I follow a side. I love politics. I love to follow that. So your perspective is very interesting to me. So I very much appreciate it.
Let me just talk about why politics is important, okay? Remember, I told you in the story, Freddie Mac, Fannie Mae put a bullseye on my back when they issued an underwriting bulletin to basically saying to lenders and title companies, we don't like these short sale transactions using this option contract methodology. And so everybody who'd copied and ripped off and duplicated my stuff and had sold it to their students, now all of a sudden they're pointing at me going like, you got to fix this. So we got it fixed. But that taught me how politics really starts to work. It's a contact sport. You just got to be prepared to deal with it. I've got friends on both sides of the aisle. I've spent time knocking on doors for members of Congress that are Democrats that I wanted to see get reelected. I've given substantial money to Republicans. So I play on both sides of the aisle. I've got friends both ways. And there's dirtbags on both sides too, by the way. So let's just be equal on both sides. There's great Democrats and there's bad Democrats. There's great Republicans and there's some lousy Republicans. Leave it at that. But, the government is not going to take care of you. You have to take care of yourself. Instead of you only live once, the YOLO, it's yo-yo, you're on your own. You ain't going to live on Social Security. That ain't going to work. I'm telling you right now, inflation is going to be here for a while. And the best hedge against inflation is not gold. It is not silver. It is cash flow producing real estate.
So what would you say to someone who wanting to buy, say, a boutique store? On the paper, the numbers look good. Some months are going to be better. Some months are not going to be better. What would you tell that person?
Two things: location, location, location.
Okay.
The demographics 2, 3, and 5 miles around that store. How diverse is the employment? How good is the income there? Because if you have 1 or 2 employers that dominate the area, that's vulnerable. If you've got a very good cross section of employment, now I'm interested. And then you've got to really look at one other thing. What is that store offering that is a essential, or that you can market to make people think is an essential? So we could go into a terrible depression cycle. And if you sell ice cream and you don't have mass layoffs in your area, most of the people still have a job, and you market ice cream in a way that people look at as an escape from the drudgery of going home and dealing with the bad news on the TV and on the internet and so on, you're going to sell a lot of ice cream. But if you suck at marketing, you're going to go out of business.
So in other words, a person who was theoretically thinking of buying the store should stick her butt to real estate. Is that what you're telling me?
I'm telling you to focus on what you're the best at. Do not spread yourself thin at this point in time. I'm getting narrower and narrower in what I do. If it doesn't involve a self-directed IRA, if it's not a real estate deal in Ohio, if I'm not working on buying more apartment complexes with this colleague of mine, and if it doesn't involve political activity in Washington, D.C., I am not interested. Those are the 4 things I'm doing. That's it. Leave me alone other than that.
I'm going to take your advice, and I'm going to narrow a little bit harder. So for any of my listeners out there, I've been approached with the opportunity to buy a children's boutique. I love it. I love the idea, but on paper, it just emotionally, I got to get out of it. And it doesn't make sense for me to buy it. Want to buy it, but cash flowing, producing real estate is where Hannah needs to stick. So Hannah's got to stick there. So Mr. Watson, you have been absolutely amazing. Blew my mind on everything politics that I thought I knew and things I didn't have a clue existed. So thank you for that. So we're wrapping down on time. At the end of my show, I have 3 questions I ask all of my guests. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Remember, I don't even know what the questions
You
are.
don't. You don't. I could bamboozle you, but they're pretty simple. My first one is, if you had 1 year left, what is something on your bucket list you would like to do?
If I had 1 year left,
Yes,
I
sir.
would spend a piece of time in Europe catching at least 2 out of the 3 grand tours, probably the mountain stages in the Giro d'Italia and some mountain stages in the Tour de France as a spectator. I would be ecstatic to watch that.
Wonderful answer. Question number 2. What is a skill that you have always wanted to learn?
In the last 5 years, I've known I wanted to learn Spanish, because there's just leaves so much more life opportunity available where else I could live. Yeah, Spanish. And then the most recent addition, and this has only been in the last year, I would love to learn Hebrew, because the Old Testament is such a rich book from a historical perspective, from a literary perspective, from an archaeological perspective. It is just something I want to go learn and read it in the original.
That's a fantastic answer. I love that. Third question. If you could go back in time and talk to your 18-year-old self, what would you say?
I would tell my 18-year-old self to do a lot of what he did. Pursue your passion, become a lawyer. You're going to be great at it. I would tell him to never chase an individual stock. Instead, shove the money into the S&P 500. And then I would tell him in 2011, buy as much Bitcoin as you can get your hands on it. Hang on to it and don't let go for at least 10 years. He could have watched it go from $1 a coin to $66,000 a coin. Yeah. Cool. And so the corollary to that I asked myself is this: in the next 10 years, what's the next Bitcoin? Well, that's a question I'm asking, and I don't have an answer yet.
Yeah. When you find that answer, you give me a call. We'll work something out. Okay.
When I find that answer, I'll let you know. Yeah.
Please do. Don't forget me. Jeff, you have been an amazing guest. I've appreciated all of your time. If anyone wants to reach out to you to work with you, whether it's through your lawyer system, through syndication, if someone wants to reach out to you, how can they find you?
So there's 2 ways they can find me. And there's only 2 ways you can find me. The first way is at my blog, watsoninvested.com. watsoninvested.com. If you're serious about doing it, go check me out at SiriusSub2.com. SiriusSub2.com.
For my listeners out there, I hope that you have learned something. I hope that I have piqued your interest. I think that Jeff has just unleashed a whole box of candy that I'm about to go Google when this episode finishes. Jeff, you've been amazing. Thank you so much. I appreciate everyone. Bye, guys.